Good morning. So, this morning, I thought I'd talk about our practice. And also the time that Zenshuji and I spent last week at Zenshuji temple was it last week? I think it was last week, in Los Angeles. To celebrate, it's just the second half of the celebration of its 100th anniversary, the first Soto Zen temple in North America. We've spoken of it before. But I considered my experience there again this time, and also learned more about the story of Zenshuji, which I thought I'd share with you. They produced this wonderful book with a lot about the ceremony and the visiting the abbot of one of the two head monasteries of the Soto Zen tradition in Japan, Sojiji, was there to celebrate, to be an officiant, and also other esteemed figures, aka mucky mucks. Really wonderful folks. And they also produced this little book called The Founding History of Zenshuji, which was written in 1932. So it's the history until 1932, which makes it a really interesting document because they didn't know what was going to happen in the future. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the entire history, but I wanted to say a few things because I think it helps us to understand where we come from. And I've been inspired by the story. So, little context. In 1915, a representative from one of the two main temples of Soto Zen Eiheiji attended the Pan-Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco. On his way back to Japan, he stopped in Hawaii. I think probably they always stopped in Hawaii then in 1915. Can you imagine how long it took? And he spoke with Reverend Hosen Isobe, who was serving as a priest in Hawaii. And he spoke to him about going to the mainland. And then in 1921, a representative of Sojiji came to the mainland and visited LA. And he too stopped by Hawaii and spoke to Reverend Isobe to see if he would go to the mainland. So think about it. Here's Reverend Isobe. He's already left Japan. He's already like a gazillion miles away from home. He's enduring hardships, as most of his congregation were likely sugarcane workers living a very, very hard life. And he's being asked to pick up stakes again and move to the mainland, where he's not going to know anybody, and start again. And he did. In 1922, he did that with almost no money. He rented a small room in the house of some immigrants, and he set to work establishing relationships with the community in Los Angeles. And he set up a temporary temple in the home of this family and got started. So LA was an excellent choice to do this, to establish the first temple. The community was strong. The people were finding their way in business and farming. The economy was booming with oil and Hollywood and agriculture. Almost all of the agricultural workers in Los Angeles at that time were Japanese immigrants. And another thing that I found out, which was interesting, is that there was an opportunity for Japanese exchange students to study at California colleges there. So there was this sense of possibility. So in 1923, despite the fact that land in LA at the time was very, very expensive, they purchased some land to build a temple, but it was really hard road, very, very limited. Anti-immigration, specifically anti-Asian and anti-Japanese attitudes were very strong. If you're interested, read a detailed history in here. And when you read the history of Zenshuji, you really get a feel for this, detailed in the 20s. So there are a lot of challenges to growing the community, and it took great faith and great dedication and great creativity. There were lots of blocks to Japanese immigrants becoming citizens, lots of blocks for Japanese immigrants to own land. There was even an attempt to prevent American-born children of Japanese immigrants from being citizens, because citizens could buy land. So that's kind of the workaround that ended up happening with buying land, was to have the children be the owners. So there was deeply ingrained prejudice and policies about purchasing land. And in the end, we know that these diluted attitudes resulted in Japanese Americans during World War II being incarcerated. So there's a lot of hardship for many. During incarceration, Buddhist ministers banded together from various sects to keep the Dharma alive and serve their communities, often facing opposition. So we know there was a lot of opposition to Buddhist practice and teachings in the camps. And with almost nothing and a lot of creativity, they found a way. And there's Duncan Williams has written about this, as you all know, very in great detail, very moving story. After the community returned to Los Angeles, they found that the Zenshuji temple had been seized by the city of Los Angeles for unpaid taxes. And they were faced with an enormous debt. I think about it. They're being asked to pay taxes to a government that incarcerated them. And then they have to pay the debt when they get back with nothing. So after a great deal of work, the members paid off the debt. And also Zenshuji became a refuge for many returnees who had no place to go. So this is the history that saturates the ground that Zenshuji is on. And there was a previous place before this, but out of this grew this vibrant community. And it's also interesting to read about all of the service that was given to wider to communities around LA in the extended area. Now a part of LA, but at the time not. Farming communities and oil workers and just all kinds. So the Zenshuji continued to grow and become stronger and more vibrant. When you visit this place, to be in this place with people of determination and joy in the Dharma is always an inspiration for me. It's not a sappy feeling. I don't visit this place with some idealized vision or starry eyes. These are just ordinary people who have done an incredible thing. The beauty of the place, its deep roots and its strong Dharma spirit and practical down-to-earth way has revealed itself to me over and over and over again over time. All the different ways that kindness and care and humanness goes into preparing the rituals that we do, the meals that we share, everything from Subway sandwiches to exquisite homemade Japanese food, which is usually accompanied by hummus and let's see what else. It's like it's this conglomeration of stuff, right? So the last meal we had started off with croissant sandwiches, went to tacos, and then sushi, and then Chinese noodles. So you get an idea of this. So there's this sense of ordinary, solid, and deep. I was thinking when I was there that Zen practice is a bit like learning a language. To learn a language, you can't just observe it or listen to it. You can learn a lot that way. You know, you can listen to things, but you can't truly know it until you step into it and speak it, right? You have to taste it. You have to use your body to express it. And there's no end to the subtleties that are uncovered over years of speaking a language. There's an endless variety of words, phrases, nuances, tones, shifts in context. You know, you don't ever stop learning a language, even your first language, much less something that you move into. And there's nothing like immersing oneself in a situation where it is the native tongue. Someone new to a language can see things that a native speaker can't, hear things or not hear things. They can bring new meanings, new turns of phrase. But stepping into a place where one is surrounded by a language allows you to be shaped in ways you cannot predict, right? There are many such places for our Zen practice where we're surrounded by this language. It's not just limited to temples like Zenshuji. We create a place like that here when we speak this language of Zen practice together. By creating this and by hearing this and by immersing ourselves, our bodies and minds are impacted. And each encounter gives us a depth and richness. Each time we learn something, we're moved by something. There's a kind of back and forth. I think it's good to not know, to be open, to be shaped and changed. This is a posture of humility and dignity. When you go in this way, you don't decide from the outside what's important to know and what is not. How can you know that from the outside? No, you can't. If you really want to learn a language, you have to enter into it. So for me, each time I go to Zenshuji, each time I go to Sokoji, this time with the venerable teachers coming from Japan, or just all of us. Something about that immersion gives me something. Just like I think being together as a community here gives us something. It teaches us to listen more deeply to all of the places where we are immersed by our practice. It's kind of like sitting by the side of a stream and watching the stream go by, analyzing it, studying the currents. You know, you can see where the rocks are and where the waves go. We could learn a lot. But it's a completely different thing when you decide to wade in or dive in or go swimming. It's if we sit by the side of the stream, we can grow in our understanding of it from that perspective. It's not a bad thing to do. It's a good thing to do. But it's limited. It's limited by our inevitable preconceptions. We always have preconceptions. It's part of our brains. Even if we closely observe something, it's limited by the very fact that we are having a separation. When we step off the bank and we wade in, or we dive in, we come to know the stream directly in our body. Our thinking changes, our body changes, everything changes. The dialogue becomes immediate, intangible, not abstract and objective. So I want to encourage all of us to step into the stream of Zen practice, however that occurs to you. Do it. Taste it. Listen to it with your whole body. Be challenged by it. Enriched by it. Something new. Very new. I say this before, I'll say it again. You do not have to believe anything. You do not have to sign a pledge, promise to be good, or whatever. Just step in and see what happens. See what it is for you. Listen with your whole body. Don't know. I can't tell you the number of times people have said to me, "Oh, why do you hang out with the Japanese?" What? We already know this. I'm like, really? Honestly? You think you do? What arrogance we can bring to our lives. This is true for everything. if we have the spirit of dignity and humility and we enter, we have an opportunity to learn something, to be changed by something, to, like maybe scrape a few barnacles off of our assumptions. So let's do this and keep doing it over and over and over and over again. It's like, I was thinking about Jacques Cousteau. Remember Jacques Cousteau? He did all those television. I mean, he kept diving in the ocean his whole life. Did he ever feel like he knew the ocean? Oh yeah, I got that. I don't have to go back in the ocean again. I understand. No, he was curious. He kept going back over and over again and discovering new things. That's what we do when we decide to immerse ourselves in practice. When we decide to dive in over and over again. Wade in, keep your eyes open. When we do ceremonies at Zenshuji or here, we do our best. We rehearse, we chant, we turn different ways. We learn how to come together. This is a live embodied learning. And, when you rehearse a ritual, it's a little like water wings, you're like giving yourself permission to be a learner. And we're all doing this, by the way. This is not, again, this is not grim. This is not rigid. This is alive. This is warm-hearted. And then you just dive in and you do the ritual. You just do it. It's not going to be perfect. One of the rituals that Gengo Akiba-roshi, our bishop of North America, wonderful guy with a small zendo in Oakland. So, the Zenshis are there and there's just something going on. And part of the ceremony was he had called a kogo. It's a small incenser with a screw-on lid, and he took it out and he's up there and we're all there. And he unscrewed the lid and offered incense and then dropped the whole thing on the floor. And his attendant was like, you could see she was going to go down, and he's like, no, just forget it. Just keep going. Some people didn't even see it happen. Incense. It's not perfect. Do these circumambulations, and sometimes somebody gets a little, after a while you figure you get, so the basics, and it's just a different form for different rituals. But sometimes people are a little confused. And you get it, and you come together. The point is you're coming together to do this. Point is, and a fellow that was, he's the, the head of practice at Zenshuji, and he was showing us different ceremonies. He also grew up in Hawaii, so this delightful Hawaiian accent, and then went back to Japan. He was born in Japan, grew up in Hawaii, went back to Japan anyway. He said, when you make an offering, it should be as if the person is going to eat it. Make sure there's steam coming out of the tea when you offer it. It's like that kind of care. So this is the spirit of the thing. This is the spirit of our practice. This is the spirit of learning this language. Many years ago, I was traveling in Italy with a crew of Buddhist friends. And I wanted some ice cream. but I was really afraid because I didn't speak Italian. And one of my friends said, just go ask for ice cream in Italian, like make a fool out of yourself. And I did, and I'm sure I butchered it totally. But it's like that. It's like if we feel like we have to get it right before we jump in, we've totally missed the point. If we feel like we have to do it right once we're there, we're dominated by fear and anxiety and performance, not the spirit of the thing itself. This is what I see come alive over and over and over again when we go to these events. So I want to encourage us to keep returning to this life-giving spirit in our practice, keep diving in, keep listening. And I want to invite you, we're going to be doing the Bodhisattva ceremony this morning. And I want to invite you to join if you can. If you're at home, you're also welcome to join. Most of it is call and response, so you can just listen and do your best. And if you're here and you don't get it right, so what? Honestly, like let that go. There's a way to be dedicated and devoted that is not rigid. We can clap afterwards if we want to. Okay.